All right, Bill. So that red light's on. This is when most people freak out and want to leave the interview. How are you feeling? Are you okay? You all right?
Yeah, doing great.
You're okay. All right, cool. Well, we'll keep going. Awesome. Well, why don't you do me a favor? Tell my listeners who you are and what your company is and what your company does.
All of that in 5 seconds, right?
Let's knock it out in 5 seconds.
Bill Reed. I'm with a company called RemotelyMe. We are a startup that is doing some very exciting things. Essentially, what we do is map biomarkers, and I'll explain what that is in a minute, to career success and business and security risks. It's never been done before, but it's taken us a decade to get here. It's groundbreaking and it's showing some phenomenal results for our customers so that we can predict which employees, which workers are going to be rock stars and very successful, and which ones might be business risks and
Hmm.
security risks for an organization. We don't just tell you which ones, but we also then help improve those individuals so that pretty much everyone can potentially be a rock star. And we're very excited about where we're going as a startup. And we also have some neuroscience, cognitive AI is part of our solutions and technology.
Okay.
So that's who we are.
Awesome. Well, maybe let's kind of break that down maybe for somebody who doesn't know exactly what we're talking about in terms of in the weeds of it. Like how would you describe this if my mom was listening right now, and she doesn't know all this stuff. So how would you kind of describe it in sort of that nutshell version form?
You bet. Well, think of us as biotech meets work tech.
Okay.
And according to the latest studies, there was a Gallup 2023 State of the Workplace report, came out in 2023. But many other studies reflect this. They essentially have divided, call it workers, employees, if you will, into three categories. Those who are engaged in rock stars, that's
Okay.
about 23% of the workforce. You heard me correctly, only 23%.
Good.
56% are what we call disengaged,
Okay.
meaning they're not very thrilled with their work. They're just not very active. And then we've got 18%. You ready for this? They are so disengaged, they may be disgruntled and actively harming your company.
Yay.
It's
Yay.
almost impossible to tell which is which.
Sure.
You may see someone and you think they're the ones that are disengaged, but they're actually doing tremendous work,
Right.
and
Right.
vice versa. So, how do we determine that? We use what we call a neuroscience predictive biomarker. The National Institutes of Health defines this as the ability to discern those individuals that, when exposed to certain environments, if you will, have reactions or certain behaviors that are predictive.
Hmm.
We can mark those using biotechnology, bioscience, if you will. We can do that now without a blood test or making you pee in a cup. We do it in 9 minutes
Okay.
using what we call visual neuroscience. It's a groundbreaking way to use customized video that influences your answers.
Hmm.
And it is twice, almost twice as valid, if you will, than the text based tests that we've been exposed to that were invented 30, 40, 50, 80 years ago in some cases, are just a little bit outdated.
Yeah. So is this something that a company would use in the interviewing process or something that would be used after they've hired people and that I don't know somebody's worked there for a few years? Where is this being implemented in the sort of the timeline of an employee?
The answer is yes.
Okay.
I'll give you an example. So, for a leading real estate organization, for a leading medical firm, for example, what we've done is to have their top performers, those they believe are their top performers in relation to others in the organization, all take this 9 minute assessment. And from that, we can then begin to map the biomarkers. We see some very clear indications. It actually helps us to be able to see where their leadership situations are. We actually can discern across 10 key soft skills. And these are the ones that all the experts from Harvard to LinkedIn to the Society of Human Resources Management, et cetera, all say are the keys.
Okay.
But the most important one is trust.
Hmm.
And that's because Gallup, again, says that almost 80% of workers don't trust their employers, and that's why many of them are disengaged.
Hmm.
But Deloitte says if we can get to high trust, we get 400% more business performance, 211% more retention, almost 90% more customer loyalty,
Wow.
and many, many other stats. They go off the charts. So
Wow.
that's the key is we want to improve your soft skills and we want to improve your trust factors. But Peter Drucker says you can't improve what you don't measure. So we first have to measure it. And then we have courses using this visual neuroscience training courses that allow you to get those scores improved.
And is that and that's for the individual to take in terms of the courses, or is that for the employer who's like, hey, maybe our training needs to be better? Where, yeah, how does that sort of get implemented?
That's for the individuals.
Okay.
So one of our board advisors, and we have many of them from blue chip companies from Southwest Airlines to Royal Caribbean, ADT, and Sarnova, Savita Health, and so on. One of them is from Udemy, and she used to be their CHRO. And even she says that most of these training programs we're seeing really only about 10 or 12% of them are effective. And that's because most organizations send you an email and they say, hey, we've got LinkedIn Learning, we've got Udemy, go up and pick out one of the 10,000 courses up there, have at it. And that's not very effective. So we can certainly prescribe those courses as well, but we have our own courses that again use this visual neuroscience and some gamification that give you much, much better results. But they are specific to what the assessment results tell you. You're a
Mm.
little bit low in these three areas. These are the courses you should take to get those scores improved.
Gotcha, gotcha. Now, in a sort of as I'm kind of walking through my mind, like a sort of a case study of this, let's say I take one of these assessment tests from you. I go all through it. I see you send me the scores back. I'm assuming, right? Or hey, you should work on these soft skills, these three or four things. Is that then being shared back to an employer that says I'm actually doing this, or I took it and I was like, screw you, I don't, I'm not, I don't. I think your assessment is BS. I don't want to do it. Like what is kind of happening for that person that might have taken it and gets the results, and then now what? What is encouraging them to kind of take those steps that you're mentioning right now?
Individuals can take this on their own, even outside of their employers.
Oh, okay.
Typically, if it's through the employer, then it's no cost, even though it's a very low cost anyway.
Hmm.
But we encourage individuals to do this because they begin to see where they are.
Yeah.
And what you can do is to put in your current role or perhaps a position you're aspiring to. I
Oh,
want to get this particular job going forward. And it will show you what your soft skills are in relation to that role.
yeah.
We use a lot of industry data, occupational network, LinkedIn, SHRM, as I've mentioned, et cetera, Harvard, to really discern what are the right soft skill balances for that particular role, that job position. And now
Gotcha.
you can see what they are. And then you can take courses that help you improve.
Hmm.
Also, you can certify as a high trust professional.
Hmm.
Makes you very desirable for employers, either your current one or ones you want to get a job with, because again, from the stats from Deloitte and others, every employer wants high trust individuals because it drives so much more business performance, productivity, et cetera.
Sure.
And you can put that right in your resume, right on LinkedIn. I'm a high trust professional. Additionally, you can show that you have taken the courses to improve the soft skills in those areas that make you extremely effective
Hmm.
for that particular role that you want to either keep or aspire to.
Interesting. Is there an age range that this makes the most sense to? Is it somebody like I'm going to bring my mom back up? She's in her late 60s. Is it somebody like that, or is it somebody right out of still in high school trying to figure out where to go for college? Like, where is there an age range that this makes the most sense for?
Doesn't matter. We've essentially field tested this across thousands and thousands of individuals. One of our clients is Collab Youth
Okay.
in Los Angeles County. They help underserved youth. And these are teens. that are trying to determine where they're going to go in their careers and which colleges they might go to. They work with mentors from collab use organizations they work with, such as Wells Fargo, Alaska Airlines, Cisco, and so forth. And we provide guidebooks, communication guidebooks for those mentors to work with the mentees to help guide them
Mm,
either toward an internship or perhaps into a particular college or an apprenticeship, whatever it is they're desiring to do. And it's been really wonderful to see these young adults learn more about themselves, come out of their shells, and to say, I never knew that about myself. I never knew what my strengths were, my attributes were. Now I know which career path is really going to work best for me.
yeah. Uh, and is it something that this is a one-off take, or are you encouraged to sort of take it this every 3 years, 5 years? Is there like what does that kind of look like?
What we know from neuroscience is that our brains are actually wired a certain way. We have our chief science officer is a PhD neuroscientist. One of our board advisors is a renowned neurosurgeon from USC.
Mm,
I was forced to get a neuroscience certification from Harvard so I could understand both of them. Didn't really help me much, but what I did learn is that we're pretty much wired between the ages of about 8 and 9,
yeah.
and the thing that makes us different is how the environment and stress factors and things of that nature impact us and affect us, which again are things we can measure with our assessment.
Yeah.
But those balances are set for life. So once you know, you're pretty well there. However, we encourage you to take on a weekly basis or at least once a month our check-in assessment. It only takes 5 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Ask you some certain questions, and it can begin to help you see how maybe environmental factors and stress factors and things of that nature are impacting you. It may impact your productivity, it may impact your health and your well-being, and then it provides some advice on how to improve that, such
Hmm,
as, hey, your serotonin levels might be a little bit low. Here's 3 or 4 things you can do. And again, we know trust is directly related to oxytocin.
hmm.
And there are 10 key ways to improve your oxytocin. By the way, one of those is cheese.
Oh,
There's tyrosine crystals in certain types of cheese that can help improve your oxytocin levels.
huh. Yeah, that's fascinating. Yeah, yeah. Well, you're really breaking it down when if you're getting into like eat this cheese, eat some more of this cheese. Tell me a little bit about kind of like what is your personal like background, your journey, like how did you get to this type of conversation that we're having right now?
You bet. Well, I was a former Navy diver, and so I saw a lot of the personnel things going on.
Mm,
When I was in the Navy, I served some time aboard submarines in a very close knit environment that gives you an idea of how people work and interact together.
yeah.
And then later, I became a co founder for what eventually became an Inc. 5000 consulting firm and a recruiting firm.
Okay.
So we were recruiting, if you will, executive consultants for blue chip clients, pretty big companies like Cisco and HP and SAP and Visa. And we saw a lot of these situations, not only with current personnel we were working with within these organizations, but as recruiters, we were also struggling to find the right fit, the right people. Do they have the right culture fit?
Yeah.
Do they have the right soft skills we need? Both LinkedIn and Harvard now agree 90% of job success is soft skills. Those are the keys. So that's why those are so important. And that's when the light bulbs went off. We were getting involved with neuroscience and neuromarketing for some of these organizations.
Hmm.
And I began to see the connection there.
Okay.
Eventually wrote a couple of books about it. And the latest one, Start With Who, just came out earlier this year. It has a lot of the neuroscience in it and so forth. And so that's what's led to the foundational science
Mm,
that RemotelyMe is built on.
mm, mm. Now, can you take an assessment now and kind of time travel back and say, "Oh, I see how." I got into the Navy. I see how I like I can remap my brain and go, that's probably why I made that decision because I am this type of person or I have these soft skills. Can you go backwards in time a little bit there?
Absolutely. So again, I can see very clearly how this maps to my career path and why I chose some of the things that I did. But also, I think even more importantly, where I stumbled and fell, where I
Okay,
made some mistakes.
sure.
And it's always good to make those mistakes because you learn from them.
Yeah.
But it would have helped me greatly if I had known back then what some of my strengths and attributes are, what my soft skill balances are, how I'm wired. I think even more importantly, it would have helped me to understand how I communicate in
Mm,
relation to how others communicate so that I could have better personal and professional relationships. I might not have a couple of ex-wives if that wasn't the case. It might have helped me there, and so on. So I think knowing more about yourself can really help you both in a personal and professional aspect.
sure, sure. Let's talk a little bit more about sort of this like veteran influence a little bit. Like, how do you think that that just impacted just leadership and innovation in the current company remotely me right now? Like, how do you kind of take what you learned there and apply it to what you're doing right now?
So I think one of the keys is looking at how organizations and more importantly, people are structured. I think one of the keys that a lot of these organizations are struggling with today is business and security risks.
Mm,
And so if I were to say, how can this really help not only individuals but organizations? What we now know is that I mentioned earlier, we've got 77%, if you add those up, of people are disengaged in organizations. And the stats show 70%. It's a 70% higher employee incident rate with disengaged individuals. In the medical industry, it's 58% patient
wow,
incidents. We can't have those
wow.
if
Yeah.
you're HIPAA compliant, right? You don't want that.
No.
But in the security industry, what we know is that Gartner and IBM agree 95% of security breaches are caused by mistakes that in most cases directly relate to disengagement.
Mm,
So if we can improve engagement, we can dramatically lower our security incidents, and each breach can cost a company upwards of 5 million. So it's very important that we understand how to improve, measure, and then improve engagement because that leads to all of these issues from safety incidents to security incidents and so on.
yeah.
And just unhappiness in the workplace in general.
Yeah. Did you find that this explosion of remote work really amplified what you do, considering that I don't think I've ever met anybody besides my wife works for us, but like I've never actually met anybody face to face. So, I rely on this right here and a feeling and a vibe and like, yeah, he answered the questions kind of good. But did you see just remote work explode what you're doing right now, or did it not really matter?
No question about it. And our name, Remotely Me, it really implies that most of these assessments, solutions, personality tests, whatever we want to call them, are not remotely me. Okay? They're just they're just not even in the ballpark.
Yeah.
Their validity is somewhere around 60 to maybe 67%. We're at 93% valid.
Mm,
So that's one. But also remote work, regardless of what you may read in the papers, all the stats are showing we are increasing hybrid.
yeah.
We are a hybrid work society. Deal with it. And the problem we're facing is that a lot of the executives may not like it. Why? They don't trust.
Mm,
They don't feel like they can trust their employees.
mm,
We can solve that because we can measure where the trust factors are. And if they're low, you don't have to fire them or drag them back into the office. We can help them improve their trust factors so you can feel like you trust them
yeah.
to be able to work remotely or to work hybrid. So we can solve this issue where you don't have to force people back into the office. And when you do that, by the way, that's the biggest way for you to tank oxytocin levels, which tank trust. And again, 4x more business performance and high trust.
Yeah.
So if you hate people, you should at least find a way to trust them so you can improve your business performance.
Sure, sure. Talk to me a little bit about just challenges, like what is keeping you up at night? What do you have to overcome? Maybe on the technology side, companies adopting. Yeah, what are some of the challenges right now?
Well, I think the main challenge is that we've got some tremendous interest, tremendous traction. I mentioned some of our board advisors, many of them have become customers. Many of them are anxious to move forward with trials, but a lot of them are large organizations
Mm,
and they really need to have what we would call more of an enterprise class solution.
mm,
And we're about halfway there.
okay.
We're a startup. We know what we need to do. We have very exciting plans for version 2.0, including next gen visual neuroscience that takes advantage of Sora, which is
Mm,
the new video production generative AI. Think of it as Chat GPT for video.
mhm,
That's going to be really cool. But we can prompt that with personalization and neuroscience and things that others can't do,
mm,
as well as many other blue ocean opportunities from e-commerce to education to dating to you name it. It's
yeah,
all kinds of things that we can explore. But we need to get that next round of funding so that we can build the next platform and service the customers that are already coming to our door.
sure,
We
sure.
were a Pepperdine Most Fundable Company Silver Award winner out of 3,000 plus startups. There's a
Wow.
reason for that.
Yeah,
After months of due diligence, they figured we were one of the best of the best.
yeah.
So we've got the due diligence done. Now it's time to move forward and to have that next generation built, and that's what keeps us up at night is servicing the demand that's coming up.
Sure, sure. And with something like this where it feels to me from my vantage point a pretty big mountain to climb, what are first steps, second steps? How are you measuring your own internal growth as a startup to say, we got this, and I don't even know what this is right now because it feels like it could be a million different directions that you're trying to get into. So how do you as a startup focus right now and go, we got to get to this, and then that will lead to this, right? How do you sort of put together that game plan?
Absolutely. So another neuroscience startup just got 26 million from three
Oof,
VCs
oof.
to do what they claim is the first biomarker to predict happiness versus unhappiness, and then an app to help you improve happiness. But they missed the whole work connection, which is critical.
Yeah,
And so that's really the key here is understanding that it's not the 8 billion people on the planet, it's the 4 billion that have jobs or want to, that we're spending more time at work. So that's really what I see as the next horizon, the next generation is to understand how work impacts our happiness. And if I were to say, what's our mission? We're veteran owned, so certainly we want to help our fellow veterans and families, but we want to help all workers to find happiness.
yeah.
And that requires being able to understand who you are and your attributes, etc., and then build those next solutions and platforms that can help us in the workplace
No.
because we're not tackling the problems that really impact work. We have all the band aids, we have the tourniquets,
Hmm.
we've got this technology solution and that technology solution that can help us in our work day, to help us do this or to do
Yeah.
that. But nobody has built anything that specifically helps us to be happier and therefore more productive and more engaged at work. And you can't do it with an annual employee engagement survey that asks you if you like your job, your boss, and your dog. That's not going to do it. You have to
Right.
understand what's going on in the brain, and you have to then help people with the right kind of training that engages you. It's got gamification, it's got visual neuroscience storytelling that gives you 10x the retention so you remember what you just learned.
Mm.
These are all things that we just haven't solved yet. Nobody's put those pieces together, and we want to be the company that brings that to market.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about technology, Sora, and things that are kind of coming down the pipeline. Walk us through a little bit on how you just approach tech into this, especially when tech is changing, lightning speed, right? So, hey, we got a whole great new integration today. Oh, we don't use that anymore. It's 6 months later, whatever it might be, right? So just walk me through just how you kind of stay up to speed with tech and how it integrates into your guys' systems, and I guess sort of future proofing to some degree, some of the stuff that you're talking about.
You bet. A couple of sides of that fence. So the neuroscience, you think of it as biotech meets work tech. That's
Mhm.
really the key here. And what the neuroscience know and tell me is that there are those people that have half a brain, they know who they are. But other than them, most of us have three brains that are more logical, emotional, instinctual.
Okay.
90% of our decision making happens in our instinctual and emotional brains, not the logical brain. But those two brains respond best to visual elements, not text. That's why these text based tests don't work.
Mm.
You can't make a decision about who you are talking to 10% of your brain. That's number one.
Yeah.
So that's where the visual neuroscience comes in. And the tech behind that is we customize the video and it influences where your eyes track and then influences your answers. And because it's visual, it's 60,000 times faster than processing text. So we can do it in 9 minutes instead of 90 minutes.
Mm.
But the other side of the fence is the technology related to how we are then taking that information, processing it, understanding how it relates to the soft skills. That's the mapping, and then mapping that over to your job success or your job risks.
Yeah.
So those are the keys there. But also on the technology side, for cybersecurity, there are new frameworks out.
Mm.
So the National Institute of Standards Technology, the new Cybersecurity Framework 2.0, has a whole new section called Govern.
Mm.
And everybody is failing their assessments for that because it all talks about the people element. It even has a line in there directly related to human resources. And most of the technology solutions out there, in fact, virtually all of them, don't address that
Mm.
because they don't address people. So that's where we come in to say, here's how you can pass those assessments and not fail your audits because we address the people side of the fence.
Oh, wow. So I guess at the end of the day, is this an HR tool at the end of like if I'm a big company and I'm the head of HR, am I utilizing this tool in, and kind of being in charge of it at the end of the day?
We see our entry point into most organizations is through security, like the
Oh, okay.
chief information security officer and or HR. So the chief human resources officer. We've had success on both of those sides. So for HR, they want to improve their attrition rates. They want to improve their engagement rates because again, it lowers all of their costs and improves their performance and their profits tremendously.
Hmm.
They can then understand their learning and development, right? Learning and development's not been working well, so how do we improve that side of the fence? And more importantly, how do we just ensure that our workers are happier so we don't have to keep replacing them?
Hmm.
But also, how do we improve our recruiting?
Yeah.
How do we ensure the right culture fit, the right team fit, the right soft skills fit for the job? And how do we also attract more people and entice them to come on board because we're going to certify them as high trust? It's also a competitive advantage. Our employees are certified high trust and our competitors are not. Do you trust them to come into your home and install a security solution?
Sure.
Whatever.
Right.
But on the security side of the fence, as I mentioned, CISOs are extremely concerned about failing audits or having a security breach because the cost is millions, tens of millions even.
Yeah.
And so this helps them do that. We don't want people touching very sensitive information that we can't trust. We want to get to a zero trust architecture, they call it. How do we do that if we don't know who we can trust? And also want to make sure the guys on our team, the security team, for example, their IT team, aren't making those mistakes that lead to
Sure.
security breaches.
Right. 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 Uh, and how do you? And maybe, I guess I'm imagining hundreds of thousands of job titles, right? I'm in digital marketing for equity crowdfunding campaigns, right? And then there's somebody else that's a welder, somebody else that's a, it works mailman or whatever, right? How do you create a, a system that can work for all of this and know each vertical and know what that HR person might want, or is that too granular at the end of the day? Because, like you keep saying, it keeps coming back to trust. It keeps coming back to these soft skills. Does it really have to? Does it matter if you're garbage man, mailman, digital marketer? Does it really matter exactly what job you're really doing?
We do map to literally hundreds and hundreds of different types of jobs and job roles, et
Mhm.
cetera. And we use industry data. So occupational networker, ONET, LinkedIn, SHRM, as I'd mentioned, Harvard, et cetera, have tons of data we can use, as well as government data sources. And so we can get relatively granular there. But what really helps is if we can do an assessment within the organization on that specific role. And for example, with Better Homes and Gardens, they had an 85% realtor failure rate within the first year.
Oh,
It was costing them a lot of money
wow.
because they had to recruit them, onboard them, train them,
Yeah.
and then they fail.
Then they fail. Yeah.
So how do we figure that out? So we assessed their top performers and found they fell into four very distinct brain balance areas, if you will, biomarkers. So we understood where their biomarkers were. And now what they can do is assess new agents coming in the door, ones that want to be, to say, hey, you fit the biomarker, you should be quite successful. Or if you don't, then here's some other areas where it looks like your biomarkers show you're going to be much more successful.
Mm,
It's still really their choice, but it helps encourage them to be able to maybe select the right career path
sure.
and not wind up wasting a year and then failing.
Right.
Especially now with the new real estate rules,
Yeah.
it's even more
Yeah.
concerning to not have the wrong agents in the wrong roles.
Oh, yeah. Definitely. Definitely. So, you know, for layman out there, walk me through your target market. Who is the ideal client right now that says, "Man, I want to implement this system"? Is it me with 12 employees? Is it company with a million, 1,000 employees? Who is that perfect target market right now?
I would say because of the fact that we need to get to version 2.0, a little more enterprise class
Mhm.
solution, it would be a small to medium business, or it would be a division or department within a larger organization. For example, a large, even 100,000 person company, they might have a security department
Sure.
that's got 15 to 25 individuals for that security team.
Mm,
That's fine. Upwards of, say, a few hundred, maybe up to 500 individuals, this platform is very robust, very solid. We get beyond that, and they want some more things such as very tight integrations. They want to have the ability to interface with maybe two or three different support personnel on a daily basis, et cetera, et cetera. That's more challenging for us at this
sure.
stage. However, version two, more funding, then we shouldn't have a problem. We know where we need to go and how to scale.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Obviously you're got pretty far right now. You're building a huge system, um, and I would say something that's pretty complex in terms of just what you guys are working on. How do you kind of speak into other entrepreneurs that are getting ready to start, maybe even pulling from some of your experience as a veteran? How do you kind of, if you had to talk to somebody getting ready to start a startup, what advice would you give them? What would you tell them to do? How do they get one foot in front of the other, basically, in your world?
I would say the first thing you want to do is to have everybody that you're going to put on your team take the Remotely Me CQI assessment,
Nice.
understand what their strengths and their attributes are, where their culture fit is going to be.
Yeah.
We also partner, by the way, with entrepreneurial operating systems called EOS,
Oh, yes.
EOS
EOS.
Worldwide.
Yep.
We have about Oh gosh, I think they're up to a couple 100,000 companies in the world now using this.
Yep.
And most of them are small to medium business, a lot of startups. So I encourage you to look at that as your framework. It can help you tremendously.
Yeah.
We have solutions that are centric to that. We work with a number of EOS companies running on EOS, and so this can help in that relation to align your roles and responsibilities to your attributes. So that would be one. Additionally, I would strongly encourage you to talk to the Pepperdine Graziadio Business School.
Mm.
They have the most fundable companies list that I mentioned. We won a silver award last year for that. And they look at about 3,000 to maybe 4,000 companies every year.
Mm.
Compete in that, because even if you don't win, they'll take you through due diligence that is on a par with, if not better than, most venture capital firms. So you'll see where your weaknesses and strengths are.
Yeah.
You'll understand where you need to improve, and you'll see their assessment of you from lots of different business and financial. And they even brought in an AI expert for us
Oh,
to
cool.
kick our tires. It was pretty exhaustive,
Yeah.
but that's a great learning experience.
Yeah. Well, let's talk as we're kind of wrapping up here a little bit. Let's talk about maybe how you envision this in your legacy. You've got a really strong background. Like, where do you see Remotely Me fitting into your legacy when the dust settles?
I read a wonderful book years ago written by Jim Clifton. He's the CEO of Gallup. He commissioned a 10-year study across 160 countries, which represents 99% of the working population, to ask them a single question: what do you want most in life? What's going to make you happy? The answer: I just want a good job, so that I can take care of my family, so that I can be altruistic.
Yeah.
It's basically A.H. Maslow, right? Uh, you need to take care of your bottom of the triangle personal needs, and that's where a good job comes in before you can get to the upper tier, if you will, and be more if, altruistic and happy and things of that nature.
Yeah.
So that's really the mission for Remotely Me, and that's the legacy that I would like to leave. Is that we've got so many problems in the world. When you hear stats like almost 80% of employees don't trust, they're disengaged and unhappy, they bring that home.
Yeah.
I volunteer for some youth groups, and I hear these teens all the time talk about some issues going on in their home. Almost always stems from work. You've got the mother or father, they're dealing with these stress issues and all the efforts they're trying to put in their jobs, and they have to bottle it up at work because they can't let it out. They don't
Yeah.
want to get fired, and then they
Right.
come home and it explodes,
Mm.
and take it out on the kids and family. They don't really mean to, but they just can't help it.
Yeah.
We need to help solve that. We need to make a difference in the world. And so, an investment in Remotely Me is not just an investment in enriching someone's pocketbook, although that's certainly hopefully going to be the case. It's a way for all of us to make a difference in the world
Sure.
and to truly make an impact.
Yeah, awesome. It's awesome. Well, we're going to do a quick pivot here into something we do at the end of every podcast. We're going to talk about something completely different. We're going to get into a couple other things here. So, what are you watching on TV right now? What are you watching on the Netflix, Hulu? Any shows that you're enjoying right now?
Actually, my wife's from England, and
Okay.
so we like many of the shows coming out of BBC.
Okay.
There are some really fantastic shows. You can get them on Netflix or Prime or any of those that are on BritBox or Acorn or one of those that have these new British detective shows
Okay.
that are really outstanding. We like pretty much all of them that are coming out. So that's what I'm watching.
Nice.
And I've been reading Peter Codron. He's a science fiction writer.
Okay.
He's got a series about first contact, about what it would be, what the world would actually do, what we would actually do as humans in all these different first contact scenarios with maybe an intelligent race that wants to knock on our door.
Sure, sure.
I find it fascinating because we're about the politics and more the human nature.
Yeah.
And I look at it from the neuroscience, neurobiology standpoint about why we react and do certain things and why our brain reacts certain ways. That's
Mhm.
kind of what I'm getting out of it. That's
Yeah.
been fun.
That's cool. How about podcasts? Do you listen to any podcasts?
I think yours is going to be the absolute
But
best
I mean,
podcast
outside of
question.
everyone, do you listen to any other ones? You know.
No doubt about it.
Yeah.
A number of them out there. So I think one of the ones that I'm really excited about is I'm also a co-founder for the Us for Warriors Foundation, US, the number 4 warriors.org.
Okay.
And we've got some podcasts coming out that are primarily for the veteran community, but
Hmm.
for every veteran, there's 3 to 4 relatives,
Yep.
family members. And so we're talking almost a third of the workforce out there. But we're really excited about dealing with some of the things that can affect the veteran community and how can we help our veterans better and not just do handouts, but maybe hand ups.
Hmm.
Those are the kind of things that we're talking about.
Awesome. Awesome. How about music? What are you listening to? Do you listen to any music?
Yes, some of the music that I've been listening to lately is there was a really excellent artist called The Beautiful Life. There's a movie called The Beautiful Life,
Okay.
and he's out of the Netherlands.
Hmm.
Uh, and he's come out with some music that I think is just absolutely outstanding. Christopher, he goes by the name just Christopher, and that's it.
Okay.
But his music is really fantastic, and the title song for that movie is just outstanding.
Nice. Nice. Well, I appreciate you taking time your day. Where should people go if they want to dive in? They want to learn more. Where should we send people?
RemotelyMe.com, RemotelyMe.com, and that gives you everything. Right there on that front page, you'll find a link over to our regulation CF round. So it's going to be for a short period of time.
Hmm.
We're doing this essentially to bridge between where we are today and to our next round because we did win the silver award last year. We are getting pursued quite a bit by venture capitalists, but we want to hold them off a bit to get to a little higher valuation.
Sure.
And so this is an opportunity to ride with us,
Mm.
essentially jump in at the current valuation in this CF reg round, ride us to that next valuation level, if you will,
Hmm.
for these VCs. Call it 9 to 12 months from now or so is what
Yep.
the plan is. And capitalize on that, if you will, but also join us on our mission. So RemotelyMe.com, you'll find everything you need right there. You can invest for as low as $99.
Awesome. Awesome. And I'll put all the links to everything in the show notes. So if you are listening to this and you want to go do some clicking, just go to the show notes right now and you can head on over there. Bill, I appreciate you taking time out of your day. I know you're busy. You're in the middle of a campaign, startup world. Time is precious, and I appreciate you taking some time for us and my listeners. I wish you nothing but luck on this net capital campaign, and I look forward to hearing more from you in the future.
Sounds great. Really appreciate your time. Fantastic questions. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much.